Good morning, Grindstone Church. Welcome to our online service this weekend. We're so glad that you guys are here with us today. We have some great stuff that's coming up this morning. We have Christy, who's going to be doing some worship stuff for us. We're going to have some kid stuff that's going to be in the Psalms. And the big kids, the adults, we're going to keep going in the Psalms as well this morning too. So hang back. We're just about to get started. And Christy is about to lead us in a call to worship this morning.
Good morning. This morning I want to read some verses from Psalm chapter 62, verses 5 to 7 as our call to worship. Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from him. Truly he is my rock and my salvation. He is my mighty fortress. I will not be shaken. My salvation and my honor depend on God. He is my mighty rock, my refuge. Sunshine.
Christy, thanks so much for leading us in worship this morning. Now it's time for the surprise box, you guys. Sam left something special for me here in the surprise box today. Look how surprised the googly eyes of the surprise box are this morning. So we're going to see what's inside. It is a man-proof surprise box today. It's a cup of water. There's water in here. This is like it's like a cup. It's like a baby bullet because Sam's been helping us with blending all kinds of neat science experiments in which we feed a baby Oliver. So we make a lot of our baby food stuff at home, and this is a cup of water that's not going to spill all over the place when we keep it in the surprise box. So this cup today, this little container, reminds us of a verse that we are memorizing in Psalm 23, because it talks about, don't move, it talks about still waters. It talks about water that's not moving. Our verses today say, He leads us beside still waters, He restores my soul. So isn't that amazing if you guys think about it? If you guys think about water and how we try to be close to water, to oceans, to rivers, to lakes, it has this wonderfully calming effect on people. People love to take vacations on places where there's a beautiful beach. People love to take vacations to cottages because there's beautiful lakes there. People like to get out of their houses, which we can't do right now, but it's gonna happen again someday, you guys, and we're all gonna run to the lake, and we're all gonna run to the beach so that we can get beside some still waters. You know, sometimes when we feel anxious or overwhelmed, we go for a walk by a lake and we're reminded of God's love for us. We're reminded of God's effect on us, of giving us peace. You know, when Jesus was with his disciples one time when they were out on the sea, he demonstrated his power over the sea. And the sea was viewed as this mysterious, dark, watery grave that people were terrified of. And so for God to lead us to still waters, if you think about it, if you tie those two images and pictures together, He leads us to a place of calm. He leads us to a place of peace. He leads us out of the storm of life that we find ourselves in. So let's read together the story this morning where we see the captain of the storm. This is from the Jesus Storybook Bible. The captain of the storm. The sun was going down. The air was warm and still. Let's go across the lake, Jesus said to his friends. Jesus had been helping people all day, and now he was tired. So they left the crowds at the shore and set out in a small fishing boat. Jesus climbed into the boat to take a nap, and as soon as his head touched the pillow, he fell fast asleep. It was a beautiful evening. A gentle breeze rustled the sails. The friends were chatting happily as they headed out in the middle of the lake. Everything was perfect, just right for a nice, quiet sail. That sounds nice and relaxing. Oh, but what happens here? They were only about halfway across when out of nowhere, whirling winds swept across the lake, fierce and strong like a hurricane. A blinding flash of lightning lit up the sky. Thunder roared right overhead. The storm blew the water into towering waves that hurled the little boat up, 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 that sent it hurtling, crashing back, down, down, down. The little fishing boat was blown and buffeted and tossed and turned back and forth and up and down and left and right and round and round. And in the middle of the storm, Jesus was sleeping. Now Jesus' friends had been fishermen all their lives, but in all their years fishing on this lake, They had never once seen a storm like this one. No matter how hard they struggled with the ropes and sails, they couldn't control their boat. This storm was too big for them. It was too big for the experienced fishermen even. But the storm wasn't too big for Jesus. "Help!" they screamed. "Wake up, Jesus, quick!" And Jesus opened his eyes. "Rescue us, save us," they shrieked. "Don't you care?" Of course Jesus cared. And this was the very reason he had come, to rescue them and to save them. Jesus stood up and spoke to the storm. "Hush," he said. That's all. And the strangest thing happened. What do you think happened? The wind and the waves recognized Jesus' voice. They'd heard it before, of course. It was the same voice that made them in the very beginning. Well, they listened to Jesus and they did what he said. Immediately, the wind stopped. The water calmed down. It glittered innocently in the moonlight and lapped quietly against the side of the boat, as if nothing had happened. The little boat bobbed gently up and down. There was a deep stillness and a great quiet all around. Then Jesus turned to his wind-torn friends. "Why were you scared?" he asked. "Did you forget who I am? Did you believe your fears instead of me?" Jesus' friends were quiet as the wind and the waves. And into their hearts came a different kind of storm. "What kind of man is this?" they asked themselves anxiously. "Even the winds and the waves obey him." That's what they said because they didn't understand. They didn't realize yet that Jesus was the Son of God. Jesus' friends had been so afraid they had only seen the big waves. They had forgotten that if Jesus was with them, then they had nothing to be afraid of, no matter how small their boat or how big their storm. Man, I love that story. That is definitely one of my favorites of the life of Jesus. So our craft today, that we're going to pick up and continue on, that we were starting to put together last week, builds on the bookmark that we started from last week. The first one, as you guys remember, is our sheep that we have at the top. The second is the grass that we made with a green pipe cleaner. These were the first two that we started the bookmark with last week. This week we're going to add some blue, and we're going to add some clear translucent paper to our bookmark. The blue is for the still waters that God leads us to, and the clear is to reflect the restoration, the refreshing of our souls. So isn't it amazing, you guys, if you think about it, that God gives us peace and renews us. He refreshes us whenever we ask him to, simply because he is good and cares about us. So keep memorizing Psalm 23, you guys. We're the first couple of verses into this psalm, and you should have verses 1 till 3a memorized by now, which says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters, and he restores my soul." So if you guys are making this, I'd love to see it if you shared it with me, if you let me know if you were doing it, if you showed it to me, if you waved it to me. When we have Zoom together with our church on Sunday mornings, I'd love to see it from you guys. And so keep working on these, keep memorizing them, and look at my bookmark. It's so awesome. I love how it's turning out right now. So keep working on it. I hope you guys have a great week together as we keep thinking about the God who refreshes us, who renews us, and leads us to peaceful waters. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll look and let Christy keep us going in worship this morning. Good morning, Grindstone Church. Today we are in Psalm chapter 3 today. This is where we're going to be doing devotions today. This morning we're thinking about coming out of the doorway that we've talked about from Psalm 1 and Psalm 2. And after we see the greatness of God as it's on display in Psalm 1, and after we see the size of God for how big He is over everything in the world, after we have this big, amazing picture of God presented for us in Psalm 1 and 2, Psalm 3 brings us kind of crashing down to earth, and there's conflict. Well, isn't that life for us? We see the goodness and the greatness of God, and then bam, we get hit with the difficulty and the hardness of life. And I actually so appreciate the honesty in the Psalms here, in the Bible here, as it helps us to understand that's just like the Christian life. Right? We go through these seasons, we go through these valleys where sometimes things are great and other times they're really hard, really difficult when we walk through these different times and seasons in our lives together. Well, one of the things we see in Psalm chapter 3 is that it talks a lot about relationships. Some of us have had some really difficult relationships over the years. For some of us, we've really tangled with family. We've really had some friendships that have soured over the years. We've really gone through some really tough time with relationships. And David here, this is the first Psalm of David here in Psalm 3. He had trouble with his relationships both in his family and outside of his family for pretty much the majority of his entire adult life. While many of us can point to specific seasons of sorrow and pain and relationships, when you read of David's life in the Psalms and through different parts of Samuel, David basically had relational conflict through his childhood and through his entire time when he was king. It really is a staggering thing to think about. And here we are in Psalm 3, and the background of this psalm, the background of the relational conflict is massive. It's so important to pay attention to here. At this time in David's life, his son Absalom was trying to kill him. His own son, you guys, was trying to kill him. Now, can you imagine this for like 3 seconds? What it would be like to have one of your kids who, while you're like old and they're in their strength and prime of their life, they're like chasing you down because they want you dead. You imagine this? This is crazy. And yet, when we look at David's life, that raises some serious questions, right? You think, how in the world did your life get to this point? Well, when you start to slow down and look at David's life, the majority of difficulty that he faced in his life was stemmed from a series of bad decisions that David made. His life was a product of the bad decisions that David made consistently. And for many of us, it's a painful but necessary thing when we realize that the source of most of our problems in our life is staring back at us in the mirror. And Psalm 3 speaks to us today along these lines. So let's take a look at Psalm chapter 3. This is David's prayer in the midst of thick trouble. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, the one who lifts my head high. I call out to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy mountain. I lie down and sleep. I wake again because the Lord sustains me. I will not fear, though tens of thousands assail me on every side. Arise, Lord, deliver me, my God. Strike all my enemies on the jaw. Break the teeth of the wicked. From the Lord comes deliverance. May your blessing be on your people. The question that arises is this is a man who is in a great deal of difficulty, a great deal of trouble, a great deal of pain and heartbreak. And so we have to ask ourselves, how did this guy get here? Because I want to make sure that my life never gets to the place where his is. Well, what we see in David's life is some really stark reminders of some things that we should pay attention to. David wanted love from his son so badly that he would never discipline him. He would never say no to him, even when he behaved terribly. And even when Absalom murdered one of his own brothers, David refused to correct him. He refused. He wouldn't do it. And now, what happens? What happens when you leave that unchecked? Well, now, eventually, David's on the wrong end of that point of bad, terrible parenting. And now Absalom is coming after him. He's fleeing from a toxic situation of his own making. And in this prayer, there's a fascinating thing that happens. David comes to a realization. He comes to this aha moment in his mind where he realizes that neither his son's love nor the popularity that you have with your peers can serve as a person's worth or security. And what David does in this psalm is he shifts the hope of his life entirely to God alone and finds peace despite all the danger of everything that's swirling around him. David's having problems with his friends. He's having problems with his family. He's having problems with the rest of the people that are in his kingdom. He's having problems with people all over the place. And when he comes to the realization is, wait a second. God and God alone is the one who sustains me. Whether you have an army of people after you or whether you're at home in your bed, God sustains every single breath that you take. Now think about that for a second. Be quiet for a second and listen to yourself breathe. God sustains every single breath that you take. God sustains every single one of the 25,000 breaths that you took today. God sustains those. And we need to remember that on the good days. And we really need to remember that on those hard days. Even when you're in thick trouble, even when you're in the same kind of anxiety and fear like David is, we need to remember that God is with us, that God is near us, that He is for us as we lean on Him, as we shift our hope to Him alone, and as we find peace in Him through these difficult days. Let me pray with you as we close together on this Sunday. Lord and Savior, we thank you that you sustain every breath that we take of our lives in every day and every day of our year. Lord, some of us are facing so many troubles, so much difficulty, and so much heartache. And the truth is that very often, much of the trouble that we have is part of our own making. And God, thank you that we have a hope so that even if we're in that situation where we've made a mess of our lives, is that you can turn around and use it for good. Because you delight in bringing order to chaos and bringing peace to places where there was none before, and bringing healing to places where there was previously brokenness. Lord, remind us that today we can hold our head up high because we are your servants and we are your children. And Lord, will you be our shield? Will you be our help? Will you be our confidence through the difficult days, either as they are here today or when we have them later on? Amen. Well, thank you for joining us this morning for devotions in Psalm chapter 3. I look forward to seeing you guys later on this morning. Have a great morning.